what are you thinking as far as your trade machine brain works, Goat, about hypothetically making this deal work?
I like trade machine brain because I definitely have
it's
that.
a big part of your brain.
I definitely have trade machine brain.
Right.
Michael Porter Jr. making $35.8 million this year, goes up to 38.3 and then 40.8.
Mm-hmm.
So not a huge discount off of where Zach is. And that's, I think, where Zeke Naji comes in. He's in the first year of a 4-year deal, 8.8 this year, 8.1 the following year, 7.4 and then 7.4. So descending deal, which is nice. But I think that is considered a negative value asset right now, just because he's not really producing at all, and he's locked up for 4 years on 5% of the salary cap. So I think what you're looking at is basically the Bulls taking in Michael Porter Jr. and Zeke Naji, and then sending out one of the smaller contracts, probably Torrey Craig, could be Julian Phillips, Dalen Terry, one of those guys who's making less money as kind of a sweetener to get that deal done. Now, I'm not really sure if you were to just like break all these up into what asset is positive and how positive versus how negative, like Michael Porter Jr.'s contract is that much better than Zach LaVine's as an asset. I don't know. I mean, I think he definitely has a better reputation around the league, but he's certainly got the same health issues. He's certainly got the same questions about his defensive ability. He's not the playmaker that Zach is, and I don't think anybody would sit here and say that Zach is a star playmaker. So he's certainly a flawed player, but he's younger. And I think there's a ton of value in breaking that contract up into multiple smaller pieces. Now, it's not that much smaller, but maybe you keep Porter for a year and decide if you want to keep him long-term. If you do, great. And if not, then maybe you can break that up again. But what you were saying to me, Matt, before we started the show, which is kind of the point I wanted to make, is the idea with trading Zach would be to get shorter term money, 2 years instead of 3. And this gets you a 3-year deal and a 4-year deal. So that does clog up your space longer term, makes flexibility and a plan for cap space a little bit more challenging, or at least pushes it down the line, but certainly not impossible. So I think those are the complications, but like that's why Denver would be doing this, is that they can get off of contracts that they don't want for a contract that they maybe don't want, but a player that's better, who's giving them something. So I think what Mark Stein said was really important, which is, could they figure out a deal that is Zeke Naji plus Dario Saric, which gets you to about $13 million per year, plus a bunch of pick swaps? Could that get you a Jordan Clarkson? And if not, maybe that's when you start to turn towards a Zach LaVine, where you really do kind of have to push in all of your movable chips, because they can't trade any of their firsts and they don't have any seconds. So it's all pick swaps, and that's like protected things that they already owe to other teams that could convey later. So there's a lot of complications with that. And then the final piece here is Zach LaVine's trade kicker. Okay. 15% trade kicker. That applies to each of the last 2 years of his deal. This year and next year. It does not apply to the last year because that's a player option, so that doesn't apply. But basically the way that works is the Bulls would pay that money, but it would be split 15% of what's remaining on those 2 years given to him in each year of the contract. So I think the real challenge here is if he's getting, I think the bonus is about $11.2 million, which means you have to add 5.6 to his number. That means he's making 43 right this year. The Nuggets have to trade not for 43, but they have to trade for 48.5. So it makes it a little bit harder for them to get to that money. And it's part of the reason why Naji would have to be included, and maybe Saric too. Now the Bulls can, and the Nuggets can work with Zach to waive or decrease the amount that he gets in a trade kicker. And that would be a good indicator of how seriously he wants to still get out of town.
If he's that would willing tell you whether or not Zach is still fully on board with the change of scenery plan.
And going to that specific change of scenery.
Right, yeah.
So those are the things to kind of look out for with any potential trade that does happen. The money is still really complicated. I think what Stein was saying in terms of Denver's, the way that they value Michael Porter Jr., like, do they view him as positive value? If so, then it might be hard to take on Zach LaVine. But I think like nobody in the league would argue that Porter Jr. is a better player than Zach. I think what it really comes down to is you can't get any seconds. You're not getting any firsts. Can you get a pick swap? Can you get a Julian Strother or a Deron Holmes or a Peyton Watson? Probably not. But how can you extract a little bit more value so that it's not just taking on different long-term money?
Right. Yeah.
Does it matter to you if the Bulls, quote unquote, win this trade?
I don't think that there is a world where they like really win this trade in terms of, getting multiple first round picks and clearing money. I think what they really have to do is avoid losing the trade.
Yeah.
And so neutral value,
right there.
I think, is a win, especially considering 6 months ago.
Tie can feel like a win.
Yeah, you better
6 months
believe
ago, we were talking about, do the Bulls have to attach a pick?
Woo.
Do the Bulls have
That was a
to
fun timeline.
just sit with Zach on their contract on their books for the next 3 years?
it.
And so if you can get neutral value, is that a win? No, but it is some version of a win, especially when, as we've talked about, like they really do need to keep their pick this year.
Yeah,
And replacing Zach with Najee and Porter is going to help improve the value of your pick. Maybe you get some sort of swap or another young rookie scale contract out of this, and then you get to kind of move on and just pick your future a little bit more. So I don't think this is a perfect deal. I think Michael Porter Jr. is a flawed player. I know a lot of people like him. But it's an interesting deal that kind of aligns more with, we want to get younger with guys who have veteran experience, right? I mean, Porter's 26. He's won a championship. That's got to be in line with, we wanted younger veterans, which was what AK had talked about. So I think this deal makes a lot of sense for both sides, even though I don't think it's like a huge win for either team.
I think it's a bigger win for Denver.
I think so too.
Because for me, it puts them back into the conversation as
far
as making a deep postseason.
You're getting a all-star player for cheaper than what you would normally get an all-star player for.
Yeah, and I mean like top tier of whoever you're looking at in this trade right now. I mean, this trade deadline as far as the players are concerned, Zach LaVine is a top tier guy.
It feels like more of a win if you're a team involved in the trade and you get the guy you want to bolster what was very recently a championship roster.
Yeah.
That out of the gate so far, through the first third of the season, is struggling and not quite looking championship ready, especially when they take their MVP off the floor and everything falls apart.
That part.
So if you slab that Band-Aid, so to speak, on the side of the boat, and Zach LaVine is that Band-Aid, and then your boat starts floating again, that is a very feel-good win for that team.
Without a doubt.
Conversely, for the Bulls and their fans, it could still feel like a win if you walk away from that trade feeling like a tie.
Yeah.
If it's not giving up assets to get off of Zach to move on from this headache of a situation, that is in itself a win, given where they were.
We all silly like the mayor.